Hello, greetings, and welcome everyone to another ASL week review. This is week 8 of still season 11 with myself, SirMoth, and I am joined as always by Brad.
Yeah, I am.
And this was a very interesting week. I want to take just a second. Usually we talk more about this at the end, but I want to take just a second to reflect a tiny bit on how insanely close this season is. Brad and I were just talking about it right before we started recording this, but we have a ton of 4-4 teams. We have a ton of like 5-3, 3-5, and all of these teams are so close to going straight from the top to the bottom or vice versa. And I think that's really cool. We're seeing a lot of these teams play each other, and I'm really interested to see how it sorts itself out.
Yeah, if you look at our standing chart, the 10th place team is one game out of second place. Now differential could come into play there, but even the differential is not that far off, depending on how the results would go. So I mean, if everybody's in it, it's is probably one of the closest seasons we've had to this point. We'll see where things end up as playoffs get closer and closer. But with the race being as tight as it is, I'm expecting attention to still be drawn to each match and people to continue giving high level efforts. It's going to be a close one.
Yeah, I certainly am too. So, starting off this week, we have match number 1, which is your match versus LilA. And this was a really interesting match, and it was pretty dang close. And so there was a lot of like things started off with just you with Mega Charizard Y clicking Fire Blast
Hmm.
a couple times. You got off some good chunks of damage. Mew actually got off a layer of spikes, which I'm kind of interested that Mew would click spikes over Stealth Rocks considering your team. But that's maybe not the hugest deal. Maybe LilA was just hoping to get a couple layers and wasn't able to end up doing that. Regardless, you got some early damage and an early spikes went up, and then there was a bit of back and forth. Eventually, you had your Shukaberry Kaparaja able to take down the Mega Altaria, and Lele had a fortunate burn on your Scrafty that ended up taking down your Scrafty, where it otherwise would have been able to maybe do something back. Things continued for a little while, and then the big thing that happened in this match, Lele had Venomoth out and managed to get up a Quiver Dance. And on
Hmm.
that Quiver Dance turn, you had Wheezing in and clicked, I believe, Flamethrower
Hmm.
and got a critical hit. And that
Yep.
Venomoth was taking down the rest of your team
Hmm.
otherwise.
Yep.
I do believe. So that
100%.
yeah, that was a really, really unfortunate turn. Lily did get the burn on your Scrafty, which did matter, but that crit was just that was game ending right there.
Definitely was. Definitely was. Um, you know, it's just a part of the game we play, man. Crazy stuff happens. Last week was the Commissioner Bowl for me. I had a crit U-turn that took away my one mon that was built to kill Turtonator. I lost the game because of it. This week, his one set that worked out, he got the +1 on the Quiver Dance for the Venomoth. I would have done 50-ish percent. It would have lived in the teens, I believe. But I crit and I killed him. And it is what it is, man. It's the game we play. There's not really much else to be said. It was a good battle, a good back and forth. I think I controlled momentum pretty well in the match. Unfortunately, for LilA, I thought he played well. I thought he played his end game pretty well. He had his Venomoth set up, and things looked like they were going to go their way, and they didn't. And it just is what it is, man.
Yeah, it definitely is unfortunate, but you can't ever disagree with the statement that Mons will do Mons, hacks will
Yeah.
happen. Uh, But outside of hacks, I do really enjoy the way LilA. I enjoyed the Dodrio play this game. Seeing Dodrio coming out and getting 2 kills and just in general doing a ton of damage was really fun.
Hmm.
And Marowak in general has just been good all season. So I
Yeah.
the one thing that Mew, I think that Spikes and Stealth Rocks being swapped maybe would have done a whole lot of difference, but then again, maybe not, and I can't guarantee anything for sure. Uh, but
Yeah.
but yeah,
Well,
good match.
he did have the Piloswine on his team, and Piloswine's a mon that almost always carries rocks because it doesn't really need all of its move slots usually.
Oh
So
yeah, that's true.
my guess is that rocks is probably on the Pilo, whereas Mew has a litany of moves it likes to click. So I don't know his full team, but I'm assuming that Piloswine probably was the rock carrier.
Yeah, there was actually a turn where you clicked Protect as Seismitoad and Piloswine did click Rock, so I completely forgot about that. So yeah,
Yeah.
Piloswine was the rocker, and that makes a lot more sense to me now.
Yeah,
So take back everything I was saying.
I was really happy to see the Mew lead. That was what I wanted to do. That was my plan coming in, was to bring the Charizard and just nuke something from turn one. That was what I'd hoped to do from the beginning. And man, I was pumped it was Mew because that thing is annoying, annoying, annoying. So any opportunity to get rid of it, I was mightily interested. And I don't have a lot on my team for Banded Dodrio, which that certainly was. Um, I just don't have a ton for it. I mean, Capraja can take it really easily at this point, but I needed my Capraja for the Altaria. So, you know, it was a great match. He had a good prep. I enjoyed it. I hope that we get to play again in the playoffs, and maybe Pokemon Showdown will be a little bit easier on us.
Yeah,
But who knows,
yeah, you can never tell.
right? Which match is next? Which one? Which one's two?
Two is supposed to be IL Kid versus Brett.
IO Kid versus Brett. That was a close one. Tight match. Well played on both ends. This is just a news flash for teams that maybe are watching this that haven't played IO Kid yet. He has an Appleton and a Miltank. Seems that a lot of people aren't aware of this. They come almost every week. They're really bulky almost every week, and you probably aren't going to kill them unless you bring some stuff that is built specifically to kill a bulky Appleton and a bulky Miltank because they're coming a lot and they're perpetually not dying until Appleton gets frozen. Then it usually ends up dying, which seems to happen more often than not at this point. But, it was a close match, well played on both ends. Brett got a freeze on the Appleton, and I think I'm going to give him the credit for it. Did the gentleman's way out. He gave him the scald, let Appleton get out of the freeze. Uh, but at that point, he actually couldn't get rid of the Appleton. So maybe to his own detriment, Miltank was unstoppable. It was a special wall, and Brett brought mostly special attackers and had a lot of trouble dealing with the Miltank. I'm not sure necessarily what he could have done different because when Infernape got in, the Miltank would swap out and Thick Fat Appleton would take a hit. And Gunk Shot was doing less than 50%. And with Gunk Shot's miss rate, you're just in a bad way there. And at the end of the day, Brett was not able to get past those two. It was just those two. Those two Mons were invincible in this particular match. And I think that's kind of the whole story, right?
Yeah, well, I think there is one more crucial part of the story, and that is Stealth Rocks. I I think this is the absolute perfect game to highlight the big weakness on Brett's team. Two defoggers, Braviary and Scizor. Neither one, or no, not Scizor, Scyther. Neither one wants to be clicking defog. And Brett is the pilot of a Volt Turn team. I mean, almost every single Pokemon wants to be clicking U-turn, Volt Switch, something like that. And with no removal, Brett was just taking rocks damage after rocks damage after rocks damage. I think even with the Appleton and the Mill Tank, the Appleton did eventually go down. The Mill Tank potentially could have gone down, but that's an eventuality that we didn't end up seeing because by the time Brett was finally able to get in positions to do some of that stuff, all of his Pokemon were just almost dead.
Sure.
So I think that's just a really big thing. Having a Volturn team without good defoggers is gonna be tough.
But consequent. Ooh, wow, that was a word that I got very wrong. What I'm trying to say is that you don't necessarily have to have great defog or great removal to get removal. You can stack the other side and force removal from your opponent. Because IL does have a switchy, swappy kind of style of playing, and so if Brett had gotten up maybe a spike and a rock, and IL could only hit up a rock, maybe IL could would have defogged for Brett. But Brett didn't put up any hazard. And in a game that gets into your, late 30s, 40s, and turns, that rock 12%, it starts stacking up pretty quickly. So I agree with you that the rocks hurt Brett. Also hurt Brett not having rocks up to at least in some degree punish Isle Kid for his constant in and out, in and out, in and out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Maybe with spikes, maybe toxic spikes from Nidoqueen could have helped against the Miltank and Appleton. So maybe hazard stacking from Brett could do the trick. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too much of a hazard oriented player. I could easily see that bias coming in, but it just really hurts me to see a team that is switching just about every turn and taking that extra damage that doesn't need to be taken. But
Yeah.
well, next up, we do have match number 3, which is Peaches versus Dirty Logic, and this was this was a very interesting game, and I think that there were. I mean, you can see on the screen that from Peaches there were 2 kills from Kiram, 2 kills from Skarmory, and 2 kills from Liepard, and I think those really are just the 3 Pokemon that I don't know if the other 3 ever even saw the field. I legitimately don't remember. Maybe Slowking came out like once, but I know Diancie and Yanmega never even touched the field. So this game, Liepard was a big one. It was clicking knockoff and doing huge chunks of damage, dealt huge chunks of damage to Rotom, took down Roserade. It had Gunk Shot for Togekiss, and it had Encore to absolutely trap Mega Charizard into the Dragon Dance, and unfortunately it looked like Dirty Logic didn't wasn't aware of that interaction with Fast Encore, so just stayed in and infinitely clicked the Dragon Dance there. But other than that, Skarmory was a really good wall to particularly Mamoswine, which the Mamoswine just stayed in and wasn't doing anything to it. It would have had to get some really lucky flinches, but it just kept clicking
Mm-hmm.
Icicle Crash on the Skarmory and eventually let itself go down. And Kiram, I don't know. I think maybe it was Scarf, but I don't have any evidence. Actually, no, I don't think it was Scarf at all, because I'm pretty sure it switched moves. But regardless, it came in as the cleanup crew later in the game.
Yeah. I mean, this match, really what this match was a learning experience. This was a learning experience. And not to continue to go back to the fact that this is DL's first draft league experience, but he learned something this week. He learned a couple of things this week. One, I think he learned that, Encore will shut you down. It doesn't matter if it's Prankster Encore, and you're stuck into a non-attacking move, you're going to be stuck there forever. Now, we
Yep.
can make an argument that that is a broken tactic. Um, uh, we were discussing earlier. I would love to see Encore in such a way that, once you've been encored, you can't be encored again until you're forced to swap out. I think that would be a much more fair mechanic, but it's not the current state of the game. And I mean, have you ever seen a Liepard dominate a Charizard X? Probably not, but you have now. And I think that was in large part because DL either just wasn't familiar with the mechanic or failed to grasp the reality that he was going to donate his best Mon to one of Peach's lesser Mons. He continued to click the Icicle Crash on the Skarmory. Icicle Crash was doing, what was it, 30-40% depending upon the roll.
I
That's
think
not
it was
enough.
actually like 20 something percent.
Okay, even less. I mean, that's just not a wise set of choices there. I mean, he could have go straight into the Charizard as soon as Skarmory is on the field. It gives you a chance to get off a big hit. I mean, that's the way you use Skarmory to pressure Peach, is that you swap into your Charizard, get big chunks on when Skarmory's in, because every time Skarmory's in, it's not hurting your Charizard. And I mean, that's the way that you pressure him on like that. That's why, Chansey's a double-edged sword, is because Chansey's the setup king, but or excuse me, it's the stally king, but it doesn't beat setup or breaking because you can come in and get off big chunks on things. And he didn't capitalize on that opportunity. So I don't think it was just a trash experience. I think it was a learning experience. When you're facing a wall like that you're not going to beat, don't just sit in front of it and keep clicking the same move. Get out to something that's more advantageous and start clicking buttons, seeing if you can do damage, seeing if you can break stuff. Maybe you get a crit, maybe you get who knows what. But sitting there doing 20% on a mon that can recover it's useless.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that, and I'll be honest, I may have forgotten the encore mechanic. That's one of those mechanics that just it I've known it on so many occasions and I've forgotten it on so many occasions. Most of the time, if I'm facing an opponent that has fast encore, I actually have to like look it up again. And there are a couple interactions like that are really weird that you just have to try to remember. There are so many complicated things that can happen in Pokemon, so I definitely don't blame Dirty Logic for not knowing this one specific interaction. But
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think a good learning experience is a good way to put it.
But if I'm him and I did know what Encore did, don't tell anybody, because then you just look lethargic. Just act like you didn't know.
Yeah, yeah.
But the next match was your match with Shadow. And this was an unfortunate match. Unfortunate in that you had to play A tier Mr. Rhyme. That's what's unfortunate about it. The unfortunate part of it is you ran into the buzzsaw that is A tier Mr. Mime. I'm talking like this is god level mechanics. This is, Batgirl from Injustice, Alien from MK11. Like, it's busted, cannot be tamed. And again, Mr. Rhyme showing why it is obviously, unquestionably, MVP of all seasons. Getting a freeze dry freeze on turn 1 to stop Cobalion from doing anything, which allowed Hydreigon to come in and throw up a D-Dance or two, and that was basically the story. There's some turns that happened after that, played out in different kind of ways, but ultimately that's the story. The story is you got froze, turn 1, Hydreigon did some setup, and by the time Hydreigon was gone, what was left of your team was nowhere near sufficient to win the match. And that's really the whole game.
Yep, exactly. Mr. Rhyme is A tier 10% of the time every time. Uh but yeah, I think I think that the general consensus is that I threw Regigigas away, and he is coming back to haunt me in real life with flat tires and stuff. And then immediately afterwards in the game, uh, turn one freeze. Then next I try to I'm like, okay, I'm gonna lose a couple Pokemon to Hydreigon. I make a couple switches, but I eventually get in Mandibuzz. Okay, I'm gonna Toxic it. Toxic missed. Well, Hydreigon was apparently Lumberry. That really, the miss still mattered because it meant I had to Toxic that thing 3 times. Later on in the
Mm-mm.
match, I also managed to miss a Leaf Storm. So that, yeah, it was really just an unfortunate game. But I will honestly say I'm not upset about it. And one of the big reasons is we had a casual, just a rematch to see how it would have gone that didn't affect stats. Well, it did turn out that Mr. Rhyme froze me turn 1 again, and then I proceeded to miss Toxic on turn 3. But regardless of that, I still think that Shadow was going to win the game just based off of prep. Shadow prepped fantastically from the
Mhm.
stuff that I saw, so good stuff. In a way, it was fun at the very least.
Yeah, I mean it's just one of those things. I don't think you lost turn one necessarily, but you didn't do the things to stop Hydreigon early on. And why is Hydreigon Dragon Dance? It's not normally Dragon Dance, so I get that, but theoretically, if you were going to go back and you were to do it again, you see the Hydreigon, you're going to swap that Cobalion out as quick as you can and get into something that can start dealing damage.
Yeah. Yeah, which
But
the thing I was thinking is if Shadow is going to just click Dragon Dance again and again, like after that first Dragon Dance hit, I realized,
mhm,
okay, if I back out now, I lose.
yeah,
But if I do manage to thaw, if Shadow gets a little greedy and tries to go for a little more, and I do manage to thaw, then I was actually OHKOing with Cobalion. And even if not, I had a way to revenge kill.
yeah,
But it didn't work that way, so
it did
that's
not.
Mons.
It did not. What can you do? It is what it is.
Yep.
You
Yeah.
got the next one, or am I up?
Yep, I've got the next one. So the next one was TCP versus Static, and this one this one was kind of another dominant game from TCP. Uh this there's one thing that happened early on, or somewhere mid game. Salamence ended up clicking just straight up outrage against a Slowbro, which was taking it. And even if Slowbro wasn't taking it, Klefki is immune, and I'm sure Gliscor was taking it too. But regardless of that, the outcome was an early demise for Salamence. And the story of the game was without Salamence, Static really didn't have a way to break down the Gliscor, and even with Salamence, Static didn't really have a way to uh, defensively check the Dracozolt. So it was a lot of just Dracozolt, click a move, and then switch back into Gliscor because Gliscor can't be taken down, and rinse and repeat. There were a lot of shenanigans that happened with Ditto coming in and copying Dracozolt, clicking rest a whole bunch of times. Grimmsnarl did manage to take down Manaphy at some point, but yeah, it really just was Gliscor and Dracozolt the game.
Yeah, and Static's my boy, and I'm not ever gonna try to say trash about him or anything because me and Static go way way back. But there was no point he was winning this match. At no point. At no point did he have momentum. At no point was this close.
Yep.
And I wish I could say that if he preserved the Salamence maybe around turn 40 or turn 50, maybe he could have got a boost and maybe he could have done something with it. I wish I could say that was true, but it's not. In turn 40 and 50, Slowbro and Gliscor were still full health.
Yeah.
It was not going to change. There was a matchup issue there, and I'm not one to blame matchups, and I'm not necessarily blaming matchup, but it was a difficult matchup for Static, and what he brought didn't do enough. It just didn't do enough. There was almost no way that he was going to win with the prep that he brought. versus the team that TC brought. And that was pretty apparent by, turn 15-20 that this was headed downhill and there was no alternative direction.
Yeah, I think that's really fair.
But Static's having a great season. He's going to continue to play well. I have no doubt that he's going to come right down to the end when we start getting toward the lovely playoffs. But he got thumped pretty hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Match 6 was Dravos and is it Sarul?
It's
Right?
Cyril.
Huh?
Rhymes
Whatever.
with barrel. Cyril. That's
All
what we
right.
determined.
The female played Dravos this week. And Dravos, the Mon that I could even get its name right last week because I was confusing it with a different Mon, turned out to be set of the week, shockingly enough. It did similar things to Leopard, but considering the fact that it maybe shut down the most broken Mon that we've allowed all season long in Shell Smash Blastoise, we decided to give the Ilamise the set of the week with Toxic Roost, Encore, and Giga Drain. It was a fun match. It was pretty well played on all accounts. I thought anyway. But Dravos just brought great sets. He brought great prep. The Colossal... Volcarona was never touching Colossal. Ever. And when you can do that to... Volcarona is at worst a third round pick. Colossal is at best a second to last round pick. When you can use that kind of draft economy to shut down a top tier pick, good day for you. That's a good day for you. And Dravos just brought a really slick team to deal with top tier problems that Sarl could present. I mean, if you think about it, right? So Ilamise is for sure a bottom round pick. Colossal's for sure a bottom round pick. Mega Blastoise and Volcarona were the first and the third round pick respectively. And the first and the third round pick got shut down by 2 of the last round picks. That is a recipe for success for Dravos. And as fun as it is, man, I love Ear Teamons doing stuff. Volbeat and Colossal kind of were the story of the game.
Volbeat?
What am I saying? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The bug type mon and the big pile of rocks were unbelievable in this match.
Yeah, exactly. That Illumise set was like, I'm surprised because I mean any prankster encore mon can just encore into setup. The Illumise though was really special because it was only taking 42% from Mega Blastoise's Water Pulse, and so as long as Illumise was healthy, if Mega Blastoise was in, it could click Water Pulse, Illumise came in, and it just recovered up forever. If Blastoise ever tried to Shell Smash, on the Switch, Illumise just locked it into the Shell Smash, so there was no way Mega Blastoise was ever beating that set as long as the Illumise was healthy. So that, that really was just... I agree, the top... Probably, if you were to look at it, top 2 of Cyril's team right there. Zeraora pretty close up there, but 2 of the 3 major threats just didn't work this game.
Yeah.
So, very good prep from Dravos there.
Yeah, great prep from Dravos. And I mean, exciting to see. You gotta love to see those type of things.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, they both walk away 4-4. So kind of no harm, no foul, right?
Yeah. Again, a testament to how close this league has been so far.
Yeah, for sure. So congrats to Dravos. Great set, man. Set of the week.
Yeah. So, last up, we have our featured match, the best of 69, Melone versus Ian, and unfortunately, we only have the time to go over the first one, but all 69 matches were absolutely great matches. Uh,
You
but
might want to tell people what in the world you're talking about.
uh, well, okay, so Malone and Ian, for some reason, just all week have been saying, "Hey, you ready? Yeah." And so they've just been rematching each other over and over and over again, and they've been claiming it's a best of 69. I
Hmm.
guess that makes it a first to 35. Uh, but I believe Ian managed to make 4 out of 2 of those that were actually played or something like that. But regardless, the actual match that we saw, oh my gosh, I have it on hyperfast. Let's not do that. Let's The first match that we saw was actually pretty dang close.
Yeah.
Malone had some good defensive answers to a lot of Ian's team, like the Tornadus Therian, and had some like the. I mean, Mega Gallade is always going to be a pretty big threat, and the Dusknoir was actually doing quite a bit as well in this matchup,
Hmm.
and yeah, it was really back and forth. Ian had, I think, just more pressure in general, and that's how Ian was able to get it. The Nihiligo was really, really fantastic this match, able to get a lot of chip damage on a lot of things, take out a bunch, and of course, Necrozma was able to set up and do quite well. It did, unfortunately, end up missing a heat wave on Fortress, which lost it quite a bit of toxic time. But yeah, a really good back and forth match. Uh, what what thoughts do you have on it?
And other than what you said, the main moment that I would point to was, I can't say what turn it was for sure, but there was a point when Nihiligo was in and Malone's, I believe he swapped in his right on and took a grass
Oh
knot,
yeah,
which O code. And that one particular move had, or no, it was just a grass knot straight off because right on came in. If that move had not been on that Nihiligo set, I don't know that Ian won. Rhydon had a really classy matchup with with most everything left besides for the Sharpedo. Rhydon had the ability to do damage to the Torn. Hera even on this, doesn't want to switch into Rhydon necessarily in the Turtonator. If Ian did not have the Grass Knot on the Nihiligo, that could have been quite the interesting match. I don't know that it would have went the same way um, that it did,
yeah,
but
that's
but he did have the grass knot, so
yeah,
it doesn't
yeah,
matter. And congrats to Ian for the really nice win there.
yeah.
But
Something I will
that could have
like.
been weird. That could have got weird.
Yeah, yeah. Something. The Zapdos was actually pressure this game, and
Hmm.
I think that it could have made a huge difference if Zapdos was just static this game, because
Yeah.
there were so many turns where Zapdos just switched into a U-turn on Tornadus Therian. And if Tornadus Therian had gotten paralyzed on any of those turns,
Yeah.
it then lost the ability to be a speed check to Mega Gallade, and Mega Gallade got a lot more done
Hmm.
theoretically if the
Sure.
static went off. So it's a whole lot of if, maybe, what if, but I think that's one thing that can maybe be looked at, making sure that static is the one that is put on, because unless you're planning on pressure stalling something, it's usually the go-to ability.
Yeah. I mean, between static and discharge, which I mean, I am certainly not the first person to have used that set, but I will take claim that I am the person that popularized that set in the ASL. I've used static discharge Zapdos, and I have paralyzed 4 out of 6 mons on my opponent's teams
Oh
with just Zapdos.
gosh.
I love Zapdos. I have made people cringe with Zapdos, and I will do it again. and I'm pumped to see Melone using it, and he has been consistently bringing that discharge. I'm not sure if this week was just an accident.
Yeah, it may have been.
Maybe there was something he's seen in prep that made him feel like pressure was the route to go. I can't say for sure, but I'm guessing that that was just an oversight.
Yeah, it very likely was, but it's an interesting thing to look at, and we've already seen multiple times in just this season alone, but every single league, every single season, you're going to see multiple times where people maybe don't double check their sets and it ends up costing them.
Hmm.
But outside of that, like, I don't think that was a huge game changing thing. What did happen was just a very clean back and forth momentum based game with
Yep.
just a decent number of cool sets. I really do particularly like the way Melone has been using Dusknoir. It hasn't been an MVP of any match yet, but it has been performing really well defensively. Has really good coverage, managed to take down the
Sure.
Heracross with a fire punch, and just do some cool stuff.
Well, I think it's fair to say that it's mattered in every match it's came, and for a Dustnor, that's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I mean, when you're looking at low tier mons, just to be able to say that they mattered, that's worth it. I mean, you're getting your value there.
Yeah. So that was our featured match. Do you want to go ahead and hop on our first transaction slide?
Yeah, sure. I would be happy to. Malone made. Now, how many transactions did he make? Was it just the two?
Two. Yeah, just two.
Yeah, the Lycanroc transaction for Tangela is first, I believe, right?
Yes.
Well, obviously, if he's picking up a Tangela, that would hint to you that the Shaman's going. But Tangela, as an E tier mon, is about as premium value as you're going to get. If you've not played Tangela recently, it's unreasonably bulky for no reason at all, but it still preserves that special attack. Certainly not to the same ability as Tangrowth, but I believe its special attack is 80. Am I making that up?
It
Ooh,
might be.
let me check that real fast. No, excuse me. Special attack's 100.
Oh, oh,
Yeah. So it gets, it's 115 defense with the Evilite boost, 40 Spud F with the Evilite boost, and it's still got 100 special attack with Regenerator.
how much
So
HP?
let's see here. Your Tangela HP is going to be 65,
Yeah.
um, which is not completely ludicrous. Obviously, Tangrowth is a much better mon with 100 HP. Um, but Tangrowth's defense is only 125, whereas Tangela's 115 and it's got the Eviolite. Tangrowth's Spadaf's 50, whereas Tangela's got 40 Spadaf plus the Eviolite. So, bulk wise, Tangela's doing pretty good. Its special attack's 100, Tangrowth's special attack's 110. The big difference, obviously, is attack. Tangrowth can run mixed, Tangela cannot. Um,
Yeah, and I'm
and
sure there may be a couple moves like
yeah,
does Tangela get Earth Power? I don't figure it probably
it
does.
certainly gets Leech Seed. It does not
It
get Earth
certainly
Power.
does that well.
But Tangela, for what you got to remember what we're talking about here. We're talking about an E tier mon.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
for an E tier mon, it's as good a value as you're gonna get. It's not gonna cover everything. The fact that it has to run Eviolite isn't great. That takes away your Yachi option and things like that. But for an E tier mon, it's bulky and it hits way harder than it deserves.
Yeah. Yeah, it's certainly a good Pokemon, and I am a little sad to see Lycanroc Midnight go. I don't think it's ever even come to a match. It
Yeah,
might
it
have come to one and died.
it's just too slow.
Yeah, it really is. Like it you can maybe try Scarf with Stone Edge or Banded Stone Edge if you're going
Mhm.
against a really slow opponent, but it's really not doing a whole lot. It on paper it looks like it shouldn't be awful,
Yeah.
but in practice it tends to just be awful. And
It's just,
I think
yeah.
that's something that probably Melone has been facing a lot in prep. Kind of like I was with the
Mm.
Regigigas on paper, I thought, oh, hey, this will be great. But then when you actually start prepping with it, it's not wanting to come to a whole lot of matches.
Well, and if you think about it as a mega, or excuse me, as a meta, right? A meta in counter team Pokemon format, right, is bulky waters because they're
Yeah.
amazing. Lycanroc hates bulky waters. Half the bulky waters outspeed Lycanroc. Um, it just doesn't work. I would rather have Rampardos, where
Yeah.
at least I'm gonna get a mega damage off on your swap it. But I, it's just a mon that doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's too slow. It has the sucker punch. That's its redeeming quality, in my opinion. But it just doesn't work.
Yeah. So the second transaction that was made here is the Shaman was dropped and Alolan Ninetales was picked up. And this is this is definitely a transaction that I'm really sad to see happen. Shaman, I I think that it had a lot of maybe missed opportunities in this
Hmm.
league so far. Uh, but I can see where Malone is coming from because Shaman, in general, it's kind of one dimensional. It has the Seed Flare going for it. It can, I believe it has Calm Mind. It can do some stuff with Leech Seed, but it's not amazing defensively, and it's only good for Seed Flaring offensively for the most part. But Alolan Ninetales actually fills a really, really good niche. It has Freeze Dry, which is fantastic. It has 100% accurate Blizzard, which is fantastic. And the major one, it has the Aurora Veil, which Aurora Veil can completely turn a team around. Like, Aurora Veil with Mega Gallade is going to be terrifying. And I can and then Aurora Veil, Sticky Webs, Mega Gallade. Just it's a really good thing to set up all of Malone's other Pokemon, prop them up in a way that Shaman just really never could.
Yeah. Well, he is losing a lot in Shaman. I certainly think so. And I think Shaman's the kind of mon that really needs to be in a creative hand. I mean, Shaman is not without options. It has Swords Dance Seed Bomb. I mean, you can do some funky things with Shaman that people don't often do. I think people don't put baby in a corner. I think people put Shaman in a corner sometimes, and it gets mewed. It gets stuck into a defensive support role, and it doesn't have to. It can do other things. So I do think Malone is losing out on a better overall mon. But that being said, Malone wasn't using Shaman very effectively. So
Yeah.
he's dropping a mon that is better on paper for a mon that may be better in practice. And that's ultimately what matters because on paper it doesn't make it to the field. So
Mm-hmm.
he may be losing value overall in the mon, but he may be picking up something that will be more effective skill set. I mean, Alolan Ninetales, the problem with Alolan Ninetales is it's got 81 special attack.
Yeah.
And that it sounds low, but it's lower than it sounds. When you really get to prepping with it and you get to working with it, if you're not hitting for super effective damage, you are bouncing off. Now, luckily, it's fast and it has nasty plot, um, but its base ability to deal damage is not what you would hope for. Now, that being said, he can set up the Aurorville, which is great. He can set up the webs, which is great. Unfortunately, Defog's going to strip both of those away. Now, Malone has the kind of mons that he needs to pressure Defog. He has the kind of mons to swap in, and when you need to click Defog, do you want to click Defog and take 60%? from maybe a Gallade or the Dracovish. So Malone has the pieces he needs to make it work, and we'll see if he's going to be able to. I like the moves. I don't necessarily like the move and overall value, but I feel like these are mons he's going to use better.
Yeah, if it was me personally, I personally would despise these changes if I was making it on my own team, because I think I would probably find some ways to make the Lycanroc work, and I certainly love Shaman. I've considered drafting it a couple times. I think I would do really well with it, but the point is, it's Malone's team, and Malone apparently wasn't feeling it, so hopefully this will do him a lot better.
Yeah, and we'll see. Ninetales is not without value, and 100%, accurate blizzards that can be really frustrating for a team, especially if you have a team that generally doesn't take ice types too well. But it also can be a non-factor, depending upon the matchup. Well, Ninetales is kind of just a weird mon for the price that you pay. It could be the most influential mon on the field, or it could be completely pointless. Um, and so it's a weird mon, but with the team he has, it should be effective.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. That's all of our transactions, though, I do believe.
Nope, we have one more. Dirty Logic made one transaction. Malamar was dropped and Spiritomb was picked
That's
up.
right. That's right.
So
That's right.
this move I think is really interesting. I personally, if I was just to look at this without the context of Dirty Logic's team, I prefer Malamar. But and that's a lot of that's because I've used Spiritomb before, and it's one of those that seems like it has a lot of options, but then in practice, none of those options are fantastic. But then you look at Dirty Logic's team, and Dirty Logic already has an Obstagoon.
Yeah.
And to a lesser extent, also has a Primate. And I feel like on this particular team, Malamar is just getting overshadowed because Obstagoon is usually hitting harder, and I mean, there are situations where Malamar can just uh click the superpower and maybe bulk its way through a lot of things, but I don't see that scenario coming up often enough to really ever put it on a team over Obstagoon. And in that case, I think that the Spiritomb move is actually really good. It gives a really good access to priority with Shadow Sneak and Sucker Punch, both being stab. It's one of the better Hex users in the game, in my opinion, just because it has both the bulk and the offensive stats to pull it off at the same time. So, and it has Trick, and it's got a lot of things up its sleeve. So,
Yeah. I mean, the reality is we're finished week 8, and all of Dirty Logic's E tier mons combined have a total of 1 appearance, and that's Primate. It's come to 1 match. So, to be determined. I don't know if this will be impactful or not. Maybe there's a specific matchup that he's looking at where he feels like Spiritomb could be useful. But so far to this point in the season, Dirty Logic is not making use of his full roster. So I don't know that this will matter whatsoever. Uh, I think Tauros is one of the better E tier mons now, particularly with some of the movesets that it gained, and it hasn't saw the field once. Obstagoon's only saw him the field twice. So we'll see. Right now, he is kind of landlocking himself. He's brought Charizard, Mamoswine, Rotom to every game. Great mons to bring, but he's got about 5 mons that at this point are pretty much predictable. Uh,
yeah.
so we'll see if it matters down the road. But until he starts utilizing the fullness of his roster, I'm unconvinced.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't really considered, and I hope that doesn't end up being the case going forward, because I mean we've seen time and time again where E tiers are game defining, where D tiers are game defining. So a lot of these Pokemon maybe could be brought out more often, and I hope Dirty Logic, maybe this is the step in that direction. Get a Pokemon that Dirty Logic has been looking at
Sure.
using and start using it. Perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. And, everybody has their own style, but I can say for me and for my style and the style I've developed over my years of playing, I don't pick my mons. Like I'm not sitting there like, all right, I'm bringing this week, I'm bringing this week, I'm bringing this week. I just pull out a calculator and I start looking at what takes hits and what deals damage in this matchup, and that's how I pick what I'm bringing based on what the calculator is telling me. Okay, this deals a lot of damage, or this takes a lot of hits from these dominant threats or whatever. So, my usage stats can be all over the board. In another league that I'm in right now, I think I've got a Memo Swine with a full season played with 3 kills in total. How did Memo Swine play, a full season and only get 3 kills? Well, I've got other Mons that have, I've got like 5 Mons with 8 kills. That's my prep style. So I get that. Maybe he just feels consistently that his top tier Mons are going to produce better for him. And that may be the case. But if that's the case, maybe you're, you know, using low tier mons that don't work for you. So maybe this is a step in the right direction. I hope to see him start using his full roster. And you shouldn't force, subpar mons into bad situations. But if you're not using your full roster, you are allowing people to steal prep in their advantage. Same thing with speed tiers, right? If your fastest mon's 100, you're allowing people to steal EVs. Their team got better because of your poor speed tiers. If you're not using the full breadth of your roster, you are giving people free prep. And that is not a good situation to be in.
Yeah, I really like there have been so many times where I've looked at players' usage stats, especially when you get later in the season like this, and now we're really starting to see trends. We're
Mm-hmm.
seeing a lot of the sets people like to bring, we're seeing a lot of the Pokemon people like to bring, and a lot of the playstyles. So if you go back and you look at replays, or you just look at that usage stats screen and see, oh, this player never ever brings any of these Pokemon. You can usually just check those off of your prep. I mean, yeah, you might want to glance at it once or twice while you're doing your prep, but in general, you can just disregard that, and now you've gone from prepping against a, I guess, 12 Pokemon team to now you're prepping against an 8 Pokemon team. So
Yeah,
it can be a huge difference maker if you know what someone's bringing ahead of time just based on usage stats.
it definitely it's a big deal, and it's something that I think people should pay attention to. It shouldn't dictate what you bring. You should still bring, of course, what you think's the best thing for that particular matchup, obviously. Um, but it should be a consideration. It should be something you're thinking about. Um, just as an example with Dravos's team, he has some great mons that could come maybe more often. Zygarde's only been to half of his matches, but he's using the totality of his roster. If you are going to play Dravos, you're going to prep for everything. I mean, Lord, we just saw Elamise get set of the week, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, if you are playing him, you get no freebies. You can't just walk in and say, well, I don't have to worry about whichever one of his 11 mons you feel like saying that about, because he's shown the propensity to bring them all. And good on him for doing that. And that's wise usage. And like I said, you shouldn't force subpar mons into bad situations. But generally, if you drafted a mon, there was a reason. And you should try to get it on the field of play.
Yep, couldn't have said it better myself. All right,
Well,
well, I believe that is all we have for this week. Uh, so I guess Brad, you want to come up with our phrase of the week because no one even did it last week. But
just be creative this week. Impress me. We'll see if anybody's made it this far.
All right.
I don't have a particular saying. What I would say this week is there's some really, really classy matchups. You should definitely keep an eye on what's coming next week. Um, just for example, looks like we've got Peach versus Ian. We got Dravos versus Moth. Shadow versus Brett. There's some matches there that I'm looking forward to. Should be a good week in week 9. And we'll catch you in about a week.
Yeah, I am looking forward to it. And my slide says week 7. I am professional.
Yeah.
So, with that, that is both Brad and I signing out. See ya.
So, yeah.